Well, today didn't go exactly the way I thought it was going to go. There's been a stomach bug thing that has been going around our neighborhood, and guess who got it? So, couldn't go to church. I didn't mind not going outside because the chill factor's way, way down. We didn't make it into single digits, but made it down to the teens, which for us is way, way down. So I didn't mind staying inside. It's nice and bright today, but my total accomplishment for the day is I played games on Facebook. Are you waiting for me to add something else? Well, does making this video count? Because that's the only other thing I've done today. I feel like a little bit wrung out, a little bit exhausted. Oh well, I'll lose some weight in the process, I assume. And the thing is, I thought, no video today, and I thought the idea of this kind of sincere vlogging was no matter how short a video was, that every day in your life should be represented. So, okay, I'm representing this day in my life. It's Valentine's Day. No, I'm not bummed about being sick on Valentine's Day because, well, there's been times when Roger and I have been in the mood to maybe go out to a better restaurant, someplace we wouldn't normally go, a little fancier than normal. So I think there's been some times when we've done that kind of thing, but in general, we don't do birthdays and we don't do Valentine's Day. We usually go to a nice dinner or anniversary. That's one holiday we celebrate. We don't exchange gifts on Christmas or Yule either. Do we sound like we're party poopers? Nah, we're not party poopers. It's kind of like when we want something, we just start saving for it, and then when we have enough money, we get it. Do I have hair like sticking right up? Yeah, this is a wonderful way to debut my haircut, which is actually a nice haircut, but you'd never be able to tell from this video today, would you? I think I did brush it once today. Okay, there's another thing I actually did today. So anyway, except for going out to dinner on our anniversary, oh, we tend to go out, we'd like to do something on our birthdays, and if it's my birthday, I pick. If it's his birthday, he picks, that kind of thing. But if we want something, we just save for however long it takes, and then we treat ourselves. When I took retirement, I made sure before I did that we were debt-free. So we don't use charge cards. Everything we do is cash-based. It's probably the only way we could even consider being retired, is not to owe anybody anything. Except the place that we live, we actually pay lot rent. Which, for those of you who own your houses, might seem like an odd thing to commit to in retirement, but the lot rent we pay here is a small pittance compared to the taxes that I paid on the big house we left when we moved here. So we are much better off than where we used to live. But it's a little odd not owning the land that you live on. That's for true. But I remember when we were touring here that the property manager, when I was debating whether it was going to be a good investment or not, and I mentioned I just wasn't quite sure about lot rent. And he said, well, you're kind of paying for a lifestyle here. And I agree with him. Now, we've lived here long enough to enjoy the seasons and enjoy the summertime and the activities that are part of our community. The pool and the marina, although we don't have and never will have a boat. But I get what he said, because if you had said to me 4 years ago that I would have a house on the water, that I'd live at the beach, I would have thought something was terribly wrong with you. And while it's true it's a tiny wee house, and it used to have wheels, although it doesn't have wheels anymore. I wonder if we can still call it a mobile home since it's no longer mobile. Hey, there's something I can put in this video. I've mentioned a couple times that we live in a mobile home that's no longer mobile. So I'm going to put a before picture here. That's what our house looked like when we first moved in. One of the reasons we got it at such a good price was the bust in the real estate had really hit the resort communities as it was hitting all other communities. So this is 5 years ago or so. And another reason is, while the inside of our house was pretty normal, that color on the outside. We found out later that there were people who didn't even look at our house to see what it was like because they couldn't get past the color. The kids of the neighborhood called it the watermelon house because of the colors on the outside. Well, when we were living here part-time, trust me, I didn't care about the color. I thought it was neat to have something that was so unusual. You know, so colorful, so beachy in a sense, but something so different than I would have had in the other house we lived at. And then we were here, well, even in the first summer, towards the end of the summer, we replaced all the windows in the porch, which, you know, is now the living room. And that's because they were jalousied windows that basically weren't working anymore. Poor Roger spent every weekend he'd have to replace another handle, another spring, another part of those windows just to keep them working. Jalousie windows are nice when they're all opened up because the air just moves through, but we went ahead and splurged at the time because it was not our primary house, and we put in new energy efficient windows. Well, and then we moved in, and we spent one winter living in a 1980 mobile home, which means single pane windows with aluminum frames, very little insulation in the walls. That's just how these places were built in those days, with a heater running and running and running, and the propane bill being out the roof. Oh, we still didn't come anywhere near the utility bills at our old house, so it wasn't that we had any second guesses about the logic of retiring to a place like this. And then we started talking to some contractors for estimates in what's called in our community framing over. Now, if where you live, if there are mobile homes, I don't know if they are or are not doing that, because I've talked to friends on the internet from different places that either are in mobile homes or are familiar with mobile home communities, and not everywhere's doing this, but what they do is, nothing about the inside of your house changes. It's kind of like slipping your mobile home inside an envelope, because they build up walls around it and they put a standard roof on top of it, which means that you have the insulation in the attic space above, although we choose not to make ours accessible as an attic space because we're not climbing ladders. But they insulate highly up there. The walls get insulated. New standard stick-built house windows, so energy efficient windows, get put in. So what you end up with basically is a house that's built literally around your mobile home. So your mobile home is no longer a mobile home. It becomes one with the land at that point. So you only frame over a mobile home if you are never anticipating leaving it, which, well, we don't know what the future will bring. By the time we would ever need to consider, say for health reasons or some other reason, leaving this house, although we both hope that we don't ever have to leave it, our house would be so old at that point it wouldn't have any value. The thing about mobile homes is they get titled like a motor vehicle, like the car that you drive. So they are insured differently and they are treated differently in the law than houses you can get a mortgage on, or a condominium even, which is very unfortunate, and it has to do with the power of the building trades and companies in the United States, because in all honesty, you know this whole trend towards tiny house living? Well, people who live in mobile homes have been doing that for years. I see everything that folks go to and the money they pay to buy these little tiny houses that I watch on YouTube, because I watch a lot of tiny house videos. I love them. And they'll pay $40,000, $50,000 for these, what, 300 square foot houses? I don't know what the square foot is on ours. It's, I think, 700. I don't even know if that includes the porch. But my point is that you can raise a family fine in one of our kinds of houses. Most of them have 3 bedrooms. Ours does only have 2, but most have 3. There's plenty of living space. They are inexpensive compared to a large house to heat and air condition if you live someplace that you need air conditioning. They are easy physically to take care of when you're a senior citizen, a lot less expensive in general to live in. They would provide wonderful housing. They would, if they were used to a greater extent, keep the land from being eaten up for housing communities. Whether it's for starter homes, whether it is for senior citizens, or whether it is for families who are, either because of finances or because they are more concerned about the footprint they're leaving on the land, looking for a smaller space to live in. I highly recommend mobile homes. Or manufactured homes. The double wide homes are nice too. The new ones are made a lot differently than this one. If you buy a new one, it is made just as a house with the same kinds of guidelines for construction. It just happens to have wheels underneath of it. And energy efficiently speaking, they are equal to and sometimes exceed the energy efficiency of new houses. So anyway, back to my story. Looks like my blog of the day is a little bit about our house. A reminder, this is what it looked like when we bought it. And now this is what it looks like nowadays. Oh, well, it looks completely different. The footprint of the house actually did not change. I'll put them side by side now for you to see that. The porch on the front is the same size. It's just been roofed over. I say that the cost of that renovation was worth it for the porch, if for nothing else. We literally can use our porch year-round. In the summertime, because the front of the house gets bright sun, you couldn't use the porch comfortably at the high heat of summer. But now it can rain and you're out there. In fact, one of our favorite things is to sit on the front porch and watch summer storms. We have a ceiling fan out there which keeps the bugs off of you, which is another problem in the summertime when you're outside here. We live in the marshlands and we live in the woods, so mosquitoes and biting flies are part of summertime here. So I keep saying that the cost of the renovation is worth the price of the porch. One of the weird things about these renovations, we still have an old trailer that's inside. We won't ever get the money back on the money we put into doing the renovation. Mobile homes, no matter how nice they are, because they are titled as motor vehicles, they don't increase in value like a house does. They simply depreciate, like cars depreciate year to year. So if you don't know you're going to stay someplace for quite some time, and you don't have the money comfortably to put into a renovation of doing the frame over like we did, it can be argued exactly what a good idea they are. We could have sold this place and added that same money to the budget and bought ourselves a brand new energy efficient mobile home. But the thing is, we fell in love with this place when we first saw it. I don't know if I've shared here the story of how we came to this house. Roger actually had a place here, I think in the 70s and early 80s, maybe through the 80s, with his ex-wife and his in-laws. And he has wonderful memories of this place because he raised his son in great parts here in the summertime. And he would constantly talk about how much he loved this place. Really, I heard it constantly. And then Easter 4 years ago, so we're coming up on that time, we decided to take a drive to the beach for Easter Sunday to just go to the boardwalk and people watch and dog watch and just enjoy the day. It was a beautiful day. And I said to him, aren't we someplace near that place where you used to live? And he said, yeah, it's maybe 5-10 minutes from here. I said, I'd like to see it. Now, he had talked about having a trailer at the beach. So I imagined something along the lines of a tin can sitting on the sand with the sun beating it down mercilessly upon it. But I was very curious to see a place I know that Roger had loved so much. So we drove over here, and to my surprise, when we came in the entrance to it, Before we even got 10, 15 feet into the community, I was in love with it. The first thing is, it was in the woods, which I had not expected. He said beach. I had an idea what living at the beach might be, and it wasn't like that at all. In fact, it's one of the draws to this particular place for people who buy here. Not your typical resort community. So he took me down, he showed me where his old house was, and surprisingly, it was still there, even though I think it's a year or two older than this one, but it's still there. So it brought back great memories for him to see it. In fact, we got to know the people who were currently living in it very well as time went by. Well, I knew when we came into the entrance to this development that we were going to live here. I knew absolutely. You know, we witches, we tend to listen to the hints and the whispers and sometimes the sharp taps on the shoulder and the yell that our instinct tells us. And I thought, well, this makes no sense. You know, I still had 10 years left. I planned on working, no matter, I was in pretty bad shape physically from working at that point. And I didn't think we would entertain the thought of running two households. We wanted to come to on the weekends and on vacations in the summer, and the place we lived at all the rest of the time. But I knew that I was going to live here. I was absolutely positive. Now, the other thing that was mysterious was we assumed we couldn't afford it. We knew what the prices for these kinds of places ran. And I got home, and it wouldn't leave my head. It would not leave my head. And the next day, I came home from work, and I told Roger that I wanted to go to the website for this community and look at it because I felt strongly that we were going to get a place here. And he said, oh, hon, I don't want to disappoint you, but, you know, it's a resort community. It's going to be very expensive. So we were sitting side by side, each with our laptops in our lap, and we pulled up the website to the community, and what had happened was the bust, the real estate bust that had happened, well, starting from 10 years ago, that we're only just starting now to recover from, had reduced the prices of these places in here by 3/4. This house had been listed for 3 times more a couple of years before. They'd had to keep lowering the price to even get anybody to come and look at it. So we circled all the places that were within a certain budget that I said, because I was still working, therefore ran our budget for us, of the places that we could afford. Mind you, we were talking about buying it, and we were also talking about the lot rent. So we had like 5 or 6 places that we had circled because they were the less expensive places in the community. But the thing is, I said to him, I said, let's turn our laptops away from each other so we can't see it, and let's click on the house that we like best, because I'd like to see if we are together or we're looking to compromise on which of the houses appeal to us the most. And when we turned our laptops around, we both had clicked on this house. And what we weren't sure about is, it was indeed the least expensive by far of the 5 we had circled, which were the least expensive in the community. And we're thinking, well, is it just because it's cheap? You know, did it appeal to us? And we then talked about the reasons we liked it, and no, we had both fallen in love with this house. So we made an appointment to come down the next weekend. So we're talking the weekend after Easter, 4 years ago. And we told the property manager, here's the 5 houses we want to see, and we want to see this particular one, this one, last. We wanted to look at the ones that cost more first to get an idea what that money would buy you, and then see this, and see if we still have the same emotional reaction to it. And we looked at the other ones, and then we came into this one, and it was everything we thought it would be. I remember walking through these front doors, and then the porch wasn't terribly impressive at that time because the windows were obviously a problem, and they had the people who lived here before, they tended to have like 20 people here on the weekend, so there were futons and double beds and pull-outs, sofa couches. There was all kinds of places for people to sleep. It was kind of a rather casual bohemian kind of atmosphere. So the porch wasn't all that impressive, except it was a nice big porch. But when we went through the sliders to go into the main part of the house, we just both stopped right inside the door, and the property manager says, oh, hon, we can leave. You know, don't feel like you have to tour. He thought we'd stop because it was like, Instead it was, honestly, we both had the same thought. It's everything we had thought it was going to be. So we said to him, we want this house. So he told us the price, which of course we knew what the price was when we looked at it. And he told us, things are going for a lot less money here. So feel free to offer the women who are selling it less money. So we sent him out so we could stay inside and talk it over. And we had in front of us the realtor's list of what the house had been on the market for the last, I think it had been for sale for 2 years, and where it had ended up. And we both decided we would offer that very price for it. What we didn't realize, which we found out at settlement, was the couple who owned the house. Both of their mothers were elderly and were getting to the point they needed constant attention. And the women lived in Fairfax, Virginia. So quite far from here. 3.5 hours drive. And they were going to have to give up this place, which it ended up they loved, because they needed to be in Virginia to stay with their moms until their moms passed away. And then once their moms passed away, one of them has, from what I understand, the other has not yet. They plan on coming back to this community. I don't know if we felt the energy or we felt the fact that it had been loved. No one had ever lived in this house full time. It had been summertime people and part-time people ever since it was brand new. So we were actually the first people who lived here. We actually had to get an address in order to get mail. There was not an address. So that was the week after Easter, and 3 weeks later we made settlement on the house. And because they had to come in the meantime and take away some things that were personal and everything else. And from the first night that we spent here, you have to understand that when Roger and I we met online, got to know each other, and then eventually started dating and then got married. In the process of that time, he was living with his sister, because when his divorce from his first wife happened, it was a bit unexpected from Roger's perspective. His sister could use some help in the meantime because they were experiencing some challenges financially, so it made sense for him to live with her. He's very close to her. She's a wonderful woman. So he didn't have a house. He kind of lost his house in the whole divorce thing. And I had a house, so it made sense. And my house was just about paid off at that point too. We paid it off, well, a few years into our marriage. It made sense for him to move into my house. But the thing is, he was a good sport about that. But that's really different from creating a house together from the start. You know, that feeling of setting up home together. It happens even when you're older and you're remarrying. In addition to the fact that we've all experienced our first apartment, or the first time we had a room that was our own we were renting, or the first time we bought a house or rented a house. This house represented us as a couple, kind of setting house up together for the first time. So the house is very important on so many different levels. And then what happened is, that summer, at that point I was working at a hospital and I worked on Saturdays. I would leave Saturday night, go home, and Roger and I would leave to come down here. It's a couple hours from our old house. A world away, believe me, but only a couple hours when it comes to the drive. And we would stay until Monday night and go home. Sometimes we'd stay and I'd leave really early on Tuesday morning and go right to work. Every time that we were here, I didn't want to go home. And in fact, I felt like this was home and I was leaving to go someplace else. It went back to going back to the old house. Yeah, truly it was a love affair, and it was the same thing for Roger. So we were here as much as we could, every moment of our vacation time and every weekend over the summer. And that's the summer from 4 years ago. And then we had an extra time off on Labor Day of that year. So that's Labor Day 3.5 years ago. And we were here for 5 days in a row. And when we were driving back to our old house, I just knew in my head it was time to ditch the other life and the other lifestyle everything that came with it, like secure finances and a good salary and money to do fun stuff with, and the things that were part of that lifestyle. And of course the big house. All of that started seeming like just a burden on me. I went back to work the day after that holiday. Came home that night and told Roger I wanted to sit down at the dining room table with him. Yeah, in those days we had a dining room. I wanted to sit down at the dining room table with him, spread out our finances, and determine if it was possible to chuck it all, leave it all, and move to the beach. Well, I thought Roger was going to fall off of his chair. That is the last thing he expected from me. Oh, we had some talk that maybe when I retired we'd move here. But I have never in my entire life done anything spontaneous. That's the truth about me. So wanting to buy here was shocking enough for him that I would just up and announce I wanted to buy here. But then to announce I wanted to give up basically life as I knew it and move someplace else. Away from our friends, away from my coven, which he knew would be a heartbreaker for me, away from my church, and start all over again. Give it all up. Learn to live a completely different way. To this day, he'll admit it was a shock for him because he never would have thought I could have ever done anything that passionately and that spontaneously. Well, that was right after Labor Day, which for overseas friends is early in September. I gave 2 weeks notice where I worked, had the house up for sale at the end of that 2-week time, and the beginning of October, well, the first week was it of October, we were here. Oh, there were still stresses. Oh, for instance, the next week after we moved in, Hurricane Sandy. Yeah, talk about baptism by wind and water of what it's like to live at the shore. And there's the stress of putting my old house up for sale, because while the real estate boom had meant we could buy this house very inexpensively, it also meant I could not sell my old house for crap. I was going to have to accept a third of what it had been worth even just a couple of years before. That all worked out. Once we got here, I could have cared less about the old house except to get rid of it so it stopped being a burden. And some of the money from that is indeed what did the frame over here after our first experience of the winter and realizing it was also going to be very expensive to air condition in the summer. Honestly, I don't think I would have cared if the only thing I made off that old house, even though I was there all those years, and it was me personally who paid that mortgage and paid off that mortgage. I don't think I cared about anything except the fact that we had a little bit of money that we could use then to do the frame over and of course to put some money in savings. So I guess today's vlog has been about I've been in my house that I love dearly all day long. Haven't done a darn thing but be in that house. But being in this house to me is like being in an embrace. I honestly think of all the places I've lived in all my 62 years, this is the place that has felt more home than any place else. Oh, the environment has a lot to do with it. The fact that we have so many friends here in our neighborhood, for me now, has a lot to do with the expansion of community that I'm experiencing, the widening of my meeting others that are more like me than what I have so far. There's also the beauty of Roger and I creating this place together, the work we've done on it. Well, some of the work we still have to do. You know that kitchen painting is still hanging over my head. Everything about this house has been a love affair. And Roger and I being able to do it together has been such a blessing. So I'm going to leave you with one last picture, which is of our house as it looks nowadays. And I'm glad that in the end, thinking I had absolutely nothing to vlog, that I could instead think about how grateful I am to be locked in this house for the day while I wasn't feeling good. So I thought it was a good time to share a little bit more of it. Oh, I know a couple of you know my story when it comes to the house, but most of you would not. I recommend the simple life. I recommend it for reasons of energy and finances and reasons that are soul deep. So greetings from my house to yours, our house to yours tonight.